Hi everyone. Oh boy, the camera's limiting me to time again. I forgot to delete the old videos I made. Anyway, hi. I forgot to talk about the other thing I did over the weekend. Not the weekend. I keep saying weekend. It was Wednesday through Friday. Um, so while I was house sitting for my friend's pets, she had showed me that she had HBO. So I was like, whoa, okay. So I thought now's a good time as any to go just watch Westworld because I had been putting it off because I don't have HBO and I needed to go watch season two and I was just waiting for the box set to come out. The whole season is already out, but the box set is like what, like $40, and I was hearing so many things saying like, oh, it's bad, it's terrible, don't even watch it or whatever. So I was holding off on it, but I was like, why don't I just marathon it right now and see what all the fuss is about. So, full spoilers on Westworld, starting now. You've been warned. Westworld season one, I really, really like Westworld season one. It's, the show itself. I hope they continue this trend of just keeping it 10 episodes because it's just long enough. The episodes are about an hour long. It's just long enough for you to, sit down and watch it in maybe like one or two sittings. One if you're really going for it. Two if you just don't want to, you want to take it in and then you want to come back to it the next day. Season one had the luxury of setting up the world and just kind of setting things in motion. Whereas season two, I feel like was trying really hard to emulate that, but trying to raise the stakes at the same time. So, um, spoilers for all of Westworld, by the way, right? So if you haven't seen Westworld at all, don't watch this. If you haven't seen Westworld season one, if you haven't seen Westworld season two, don't even watch this. But Westworld season one was kind of the start of the, I don't want to say like robot uprising, but that's basically what it is. It's the show to me has always been the idea of um, people like to like the show itself is about a theme park where people go and just do whatever the fuck they want to these robots. And the idea here is that what if those robots retained memories? What if they could feel the way we feel? At what point is it suddenly unethical to treat these as anything lesser than a human being? You know, um, at the end of the day, they're still, they, you know, the, at the end of the day, they're still robots. But if they can think and they can feel and they can emulate human behavior as much as you or I can, at what point do you start to question, is this is this an okay thing to do? Would you be able to live with yourself knowing you're treating these things um, as if they're like playthings when they're actively like consciously, well, not consciously, but like just begging for their lives, just they just want that freedom to choose their own lives the way that humans do. But you know it's really complicated and it was really intriguing, and part of the plot was like who the characters are, and part of the idea is these robots are so lifelike you don't know who's a robot. And so um, season one, I feel like, had the luxury of playing with these twists and then revealing them for a really great payoff at the very end. Whereas Westworld season two, I feel like was trying to do the same thing, but you can't do the same twist because it's kind of like whenever you try to tell a zombie story where it's really really interesting at the very beginning where like people are still trying to adjust to it, like you have people still living their day-to-day lives, and then you get to the apocalypse. So Westworld season two is about a week into the apocalypse. So it's kind of trying to stay within that setting, but I feel like whenever stories are told of this transition between the regular world, or regular world, to the apocalypse, um, I feel like they missed the mark, kind of, because um, I do agree with the sentiment that some people have where um, the apocalypse, like the zombie apocalypse or the robot uprising or whatever this transition is really really interesting at the beginning when it's starting. You know, I mean, and you get a season of people like adjusting to like this is what life is now, but I feel like a lot of shows or a lot of stories that try to do this story kind of miss the mark. They know how to set it up. They don't know how to follow through on it. So Westworld 1 is the setup where, how do you get to this point in time where, the robots didn't suddenly just become evil one day. There had to have been a series of events that follow that. So in Westworld's case, it's the reveries that Ford and Arnold set up where the robots retain the memories of what people do to them so that they become, you know, aware of their surroundings, and they're aware of like the injustices and like what humans are actually like. And then Westworld season 2 kind of takes that up a notch and says that the hosts weren't being observed for human behavior, the humans were being observed for their own behavior, so that the hosts could better emulate it. And there's that other twist of like humans uploading their subconscious into it's basically like Soma, if you really think about it. If you ever played the game Soma, the idea of uploading your subconscious into a machine, kind of a digital copy of yourself, so that at least a version of yourself can live on, you know. Um, the question, I guess, here is that would you be okay with, or it's dealing with more questions of who is that person that you're sending out, because it's not you, it's just a copy of you. You yourself can't live forever, but your subconscious can. you know like whatever behaviors that define you as you can live on forever, but you have to die at some point. You're finite. um and I guess where I'm saying that the story misses the mark is, I feel like a lot of a lot of fiction goes too quickly into the whole everything's fine and then apocalypse starts. You know, I think it would have been really interesting to see people still continuing to play out narratives and not being aware of the situation, and then just finding out that the robot uprising is happening. I mean, they did it a couple times in the season, so I guess just say the least, they did try to do that. But I feel like it would have been cool to like see that play out. Also, because of the whole not time traveling thing, but like the parallel stories going on, where one takes place in the far future and one takes place in the past. Um, I feel like they tried to do that again this season, but it just felt a little bit messy, especially with Bernard, who was kind of the central point, I would say, of the first season. Well, not really not in terms of the whole time skips, but he is the central point of the time skips in this season. I feel like they made it messy, but I feel like they made it messy on purpose. Um, so I'll let that slide, but it could have been handled better. There were moments of confusion where it didn't need to be confusion, and it felt like unintentional confusion. Like there are moments where it feels like the story is itself trying to misdirect you and mislead you so that you don't know exactly what's going on, just like the character does. But there are moments where it just seems genuinely confusing, even if you're not supposed to be. Um, I would say that they try to do a lot of things, but um, I feel like they're trying to open too many doors and they try to do so many things. But I will say that at least it wrapped up. But I feel like Westworld has about 2 seasons left in it. I don't want it to be the show that goes on for very, very long, but it feels like now that Game of Thrones is in, that's exactly what they're doing. And honestly, seeing the critical reception to season 2, or at least the vocal minority, or whatever, just a lot of people that I've heard of talking about Westworld season 2 is saying that they don't like it. But you look it up and it's like it's actually doing pretty well on like Rotten Tomatoes and shit like that. Like it's getting a decent enough score. Not the best, but it's getting decent enough scores. Um, but maybe it's not exactly what HBO was hoping for, and Game of Thrones is getting a spin-off. You know, I thought that once Game of Thrones is over, they're gonna focus all on Westworld, and it's gonna be the new thing taking over that time slot, but apparently it's not. Um, but the way that season 2 concludes, it kind of, I guess it would be setting up this sort of uprising going on. you know, with Dolores making it out, being the sole survivor of it. And then you have the other team back on the in the park with Felix looking over to Maeve to open her up and try to reboot her. Maeve, who was getting god powers by the end of season 2, um, what's that gonna be like? It's it's really strange the way that it's being set up because I feel like they could have spent another season in the park, you know? It's weird because like they I feel like in season 1 they show off Samurai World or whatever as like a, ooh, look, there's other parks going on, right? So I thought that the continuation of this was it's going to be the slow buildup of the whole park becoming sentient. And then they go to Samurai World and like a lot of them are still, you know, playing to the roles. And it's the most pointless, like, you know, as cool as it was, Musashi is a cool ass character, but was it the story that needed to be told? Like, it didn't need to happen. Like, that episode was the most pointless, like, nothing. Because that story wrapped up in, like, the one episode that it showed off, you know? I remember the end of the episode was Maeve and company going over to Asia World. Screw it, let's just what it's called. Um, and then the next episode had nothing to do with them, and then the very next episode was all about that, and that story begins and ends in that episode. So it's like I could have just skipped this and it would have saved an hour of my time and it wouldn't have mattered because nothing of value was gained in that. Like, no one learned anything. um it just seems a little, it just seemed a little weird. And eh, like there's, I feel like they wanted to fill up that 10 episode slot but didn't have didn't have anything to write. I would have been fine with a shorter season if it had been written tighter, but it just felt a little bit messy at some points. But you get the gist of it. Same with season 1 of Westworld was, um, you watch it and it's like, you know, you ask a lot of questions and it's really interesting. At the end of it, you get an answer that leads to, you know, this is where we're going next, or this is, you know, what the possibilities are, right? Where season 1 ends with, the robots are now sentient, you better watch the fuck out, stakes are real, right? That's it. Season 2 is the robots have now penetrated into human society, you know, and that's where we're going next. So we'll see how that goes. But as far as watching out, or like the whole season in and of itself, if you're a fan of Westworld, I would say give it a shot. A lot of people are saying don't even bother, Westworld is dead. I don't think so. I think a lot of people are blowing it out of proportion. It's not nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. People were saying like it was like the biggest letdown in TV history, and it's like it's really not. It's just, but there were comments from like the showrunner saying like people aren't smart enough to understand Westworld, and I'm just like, that sounds awful. And I feel like they shouldn't have said that because it does not take a genius to understand the concept of what they're doing. It's just, it requires a rewatch on some things and it requires analysis, but that's the point, right? But I feel like they tried too hard to make it confusing, and that's where the issue is. So I hope that season 3 is a bit more simplified. I mean, like they kind of cut the cast down a lot. A lot of the important characters died. A lot of the new characters that they introduced that could have led somewhere died. You know what I mean? Like, literally the only person that made it out is Dolores, and Dolores had like a bundle of like little brains in her purse. So we'll see where it goes. But those are just my thoughts. I just felt like I should share them because it's been on my mind, and I don't know. So we'll see where it goes, and hopefully they find a way to make the story more structured, because that's really all we need. It just needs to be a little bit less confusing. I like that they try to keep playing with the time skips. It is really interesting to see, you know, where we are now as opposed to what was Arnold and Ford and everyone else doing back in the past. Well, were they doing it when the park opened? You know, what was William doing when the park opened? And how do these events play into what we're doing now? And someone actually came up with a really comprehensive timeline of everything that happened all the way up to the end of season 2, and it's actually a lot of things happened. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But until then, I'd say I'm still intrigued. If you're a fan of Westworld, go watch it. Just watch it. Give it a shot. Give it a few episodes. I promise it can be interesting if you let it, if you don't let the negativity of everyone else around you just kind of skew your opinions that way. Don't wait for it to suck. Just enjoy it like you watched season 1. Um, there are some things which is like contrivances. There are episodes which you can skip that whole Asian episode, skip the whole samurai episode. I mean, unless you really want to watch it, it's not necessary to the plot. But other than that, um, I would say the story just seems to be a little bit tighter. But I will say that I'm gonna continue watching all the way to season 3. It didn't put me off as much as I thought it would. But that's it for me. I will I will see you guys later. Bye bye.